Pseudepigrapha are falsely attributed works, texts whose claimed author is not the true author, or a work whose real author attributed it to a figure of the past. Pseudepigraphy covers the false ascription of names of authors to works, even to authentic works that make no such claim within their text. Thus, a widely accepted but incorrect attribution of authorship may make a completely authentic text pseudepigraphical. Assessing the actual writer of a text locates questions of pseudepigraphical attribution within the discipline of literary criticism.
So what we're looking for today is this term pseudepigrapha. We're going to see this mentioned a number of times from LDS historians, just like Richard Bushman, who wrote Rough Stone Rolling. And let's see what they have to say. Let's take a quick look at what the church has to say, and then what actually members that are active people have to say about the Book of Mormon and other LDS scripture.
Some struggle with unanswered questions about things that have been done or said in the past. We openly acknowledge that in nearly 200 years of church history, along with an uninterrupted line of inspired, honorable, and divine events, there have been some things said and done that could cause people to question. And to be perfectly frank, there have been times when members or leaders in the church have simply made mistakes. There may have been things said or done that were not in harmony with our values, principles, or doctrine.
Next, we have Richard Bushman, and this is what he has to say.
Dogmatic about in the first place.
I think that the church remains strong. It has to reconstruct its narrative. The dominant narrative is not true. It can't be sustained. So the church has to absorb all this new information, or it'll be on very shaky grounds, and that's what it's trying to do. And it'll be a strain for a lot of people, older people especially. But I think it has to change.
So this next guy is somebody else who's going to talk about pseudepigrapha, and which is basically where you take a narrative. It's like an allegory. You create this history where you've created fictional characters to try and prove a point, which is what it appears the Book of Mormon was, if you listen carefully.
I think that the church as an institution changes the historical narrative. The historical narrative is based upon archival research, documentary finds, historiographical theories, whatnot. Those change every generation. There's always new things coming forth. And I think that as I see things, church leaders, church members are grappling with new historical understanding of not just Book of Abraham, but all of its history. And as a historian, I think that's great. I think that whitewashing history is not ideal. Holding up some of the past individuals, placing them on the pedestals is not ideal. Finding nuanced faith means offering a nuanced narrative. And I think that that's going to be challenging because we have had narratives in the past that are tied so closely to members' testimonies.
So as I listen to these LDS apologists, professors from BYU and other noted scholars address this, I think it's addressed here. Richard Bushman has called it pseudepigrapha. Three of these people have said pseudepigrapha here in this video, the Changing LDS Narrative. But a pseudepigrapha are falsely attributed works. They're texts whose claimed author is not the true author. And so we see more and more of that happening here, and let's see what this person's opinion is of that.
To be Joseph Smith sort of spinning out that theology, addressing an issue of his day, and putting it in the words of this character, Mormon/Moroni. So I can see this going either way. And again, I personally, I know other people are going to feel strongly one way or the other, but I personally, it's just not always entirely clear to me where I can say, oh yeah, that's obviously Joseph Smith, or yeah, obviously that's an ancient source. Again, I personally don't don't find reason to believe that the Book of Abraham as we have it now is the product of a translation of an actual text written by Abraham that Joseph Smith had in front of him. And so in some respect, there are some missing links there. And so whether we call that pseudepigrapha or just straight up revelation, those categories matter, but I don't think it's completely wrong to think about it in those categories.
So we see that the narrative has changed, is changing, etc., as more people become aware that the Book of Mormon was not translated, it was written. There was no touching of the plates, looking at the plates through glasses or anything else to translate it. It was Joseph dropping a stone into his hat. The church even acknowledges that now, and many times they said the plates weren't even in the house, they were in the woods or somewhere else.
When friends ask me what to do with the Book of Mormon, I say the easiest thing is to think of it as a massive apocryphal or pseudepigraphic text.
In fact, those who were familiar with the process affirmed that he did not have any reference material. In 1881, an article from the Chicago Times reported that Mr. David Whitmer emphatically asserts, as did Martin Harris and Oliver Cowdery, that while Smith was dictating the translation, he had no manuscript notes or other means of knowledge save the Seer Stone. As you know, the Seer Stone was the revelatory tool through which God allowed Joseph to translate the Book of Mormon. Whitmer described the process as follows. Joseph Smith would put the Seer Stone into a hat and put his face in the hat, drawing it close around his face to exclude the light, and in the darkness the spiritual light would shine. Emma said in a later interview, I frequently wrote day by day, often sitting at the table close by him, he sitting with his face buried in his hat with the stone in it, and dictating hour after hour with nothing between us. He had neither manuscript nor book to read from. If he had had anything of the kind, he could not have concealed it from me.
As we see here from this video from Saints Unscripted, it was not so much a translation as it was something that was written. I can't answer questions like, how is it that he was able to start and end at the same spot, never lost his place, etc. But there are some questions that should be answered, and I'll leave that one up to you. Is this a pseudepigrapha, something that was written claiming that Moroni and others were the authors, and it was actually Joseph Smith, or not? It seems like many of the leading apologists for the LDS Church, including Richard Bushman, author of Ruststone Rolling, Michael Quinn, Natural Born Seer, as well as the Fair group from Fair Latter-day Saints that are apologists, all seem to think that the writings of Joseph Smith, many if not all of them, are pseudepigrapha or pseudepigraphic in nature. You decide.